Hello, and welcome to this week's episode. I'd like to introduce to you my friend Gustavo Siever. I'm excited to have him on to this week's episode because he has traveled around the world. He has lived like me in different parts that at a certain point you wonder, well, where is home? And we spoke about something which is about following your heart. I wonder if you've ever had that moment in life where you are caught between other people's advice because you got to make a decision. On one hand, you want to make your own decision, but on the other hand, you are living in this uncertainty, so you end up asking different people for advices. So, sitting down with Gustavo, it was nice to hear his perspective on how he made some decisions, especially when he was moving from country to country. I look forward to sharing this conversation with you. And if you haven't followed or subscribed, it'd be really nice for you to do so. Now, one, you get notified. And second of all, it also helps grow the podcast to reach other communities who may be interested in a subject like this. Enjoy this week's episode. So, my question is, what would you like if you had to share a story with somebody? What would you like to What story would you like to share with others that you always think, I want to share this story?
Well, I mean, I think my living abroad and my own job it's a story itself, being able to to adapt and live in different parts of the world, I think, or in South America and the Caribbean. For me, it's something that I feel very proud of, and I think it's wherever I've gone, I I left a trailblazer kind of thing. I left a mark.
But so you said you're a trailblazer. What does that mean? We'll start on this note. What does that mean for you?
Well, no fear, and you leave a mark wherever you go.
So, what mark have you left in the countries you've lived in? And how many countries have
Uh,
you lived in? Because you've lived in quite a bit.
Four, back to my roots. Five.
Its roots are.
Well, I was born in Venezuela, and and my dad was from Spain. So, but I lived in the U.S. here in Curacao, Bolivia, Chile briefly, and now back to Caracas.
Is that full circle?
I don't think so. It's a stopover.
Okay, so trailblaze. Okay, trailblazed in Corsa. What legacy did you leave behind?
Oh, family, friends, um, community, language, culture. Oh, so much.
Do you consider Corsa more home than Venezuela?
That's a difficult one. Um, Curacao is home for my adulthood because I yes, I mean during the I came here when I was 24, 20, something like that.
Really?
26. I
Uh-huh.
don't remember quite well, but I came here 2001 when Margie hired me, and I stayed for 15 years. So basically, we're talking about all my all my 30s were here, and part of my 40s. So
I had no idea.
yes, it was a long time.
And till your 20s, you were in Venezuela.
No, before between Venezuela and Curacao, I lived 3 years in the U.S.
Whereabouts?
In North Carolina, where I that's where I did that. I worked in the public school system as a teacher, and I did my master's degree while I was there. So that was 1998, 2001.
And now you are the superintendent of international school in Venezuela.
Correct.
Did you ever, with all that you've done in your career, did you ever expect that to be your career path?
Never in my life. I never thought that I was going to. I never imagined leaving or returning to Venezuela after 23 years that I left. But life happens, in a funny way, in a weird way, in a positive way. I was back then in Chile,
Hmm.
and I moved from Bolivia to Chile um, in 2021, thinking that well, Chile is a wonderful country, it's a rich country in South America. Um, an opportunity, a job opportunity, came up that I thought it was interesting to me at that point of my career. Um, and when I got to Santiago, I realized that the job, it wasn't what they projected to me, what they offered me. The reality was different, but I stood up my grounds and I continued working, and I was trying to make the best out of it.
Hmm.
Um, while I was in Santiago, um, um, a former superintendent from Colegio Internacional de Caracas called me, and she contacted me. She sent me a message, and then we had a conversation. And basically, she asked me that the my current school was looking for a superintendent, and that if I could help them in the search of the the right candidate,
Yeah.
kind of as a consultant. Okay, and I said yes, for sure. I knew the school, I know the country, I know the challenges and the good and the bad. So I interviewed with them, with the board, and they told me that they described more or less, the situation of the country, the school, and also the type of candidate that they were looking for. And immediately, different people came to my mind. I posted an ad on LinkedIn, and I got even more people interested in the position, even though you know
Hmm.
it's a challenging post. But it was after COVID, so a lot of people were looking for a job or lost their jobs.
Hmm.
So I started interviewing people that I thought were, right candidates for the school in Caracas, and I will send them to the school board. I said, Listen, these are the candidates that I find could be a good match,"
Hmm.
and they didn't like any of them. In the meantime, obviously, at this point, I had some privileged information about the position, the package, the school, and the well, the country I kind of knew. And then uh, over one weekend, and I consulted different people. Um, and it was funny, the feedback that I got from dear people that I love. Okay. Um, and I said, I'm not happy here, and these opportunities do not come twice in your
Hmm.
life. I mean, how is it come that they contact me to do this, and I knew that I could do the job,
Hmm.
and then I wasn't happy in Chile. And let me tell you, I contacted some people. One, a dear friend of mine in who used to live here in Curacao. He lives in Switzerland, in Zurich, and he says, accept the job now.
Oh, okay.
On the other hand, on the
Uh-huh.
other hand, I called another friend of mine
Uh-huh.
who lives here in Curacao, and she says to me, "Are you crazy?"
Don't do
So
it.
don't do it. Like,
Oh my God, but
she,
that's like two pearls of.
she's listening to me now, by the way.
Well, I know who that is
So,
then. Okay, so
I,
then,
but I understood each. I understood each one of them's. I understand. I understood their perspectives and why. Margie was
so often
saying,
for
"Are
many of
you
us, yeah,
crazy? Like, what are you gonna go there? That's like going backwards on your career."
yeah.
And and then my friend from Switzerland, I also understood what he meant.
Mhm.
And at the end, as I've always done, I follow my heart. You know,
Yeah.
for me, doing the job that I do is so important. I cannot imagine being unhappy doing my job,
Okay.
and I was not happy in Chile.
So nothing did nothing in Santiago. Do you regret Santiago first?
No, no regrets. Never regrets. I never regret.
Because would Santiago have would where you are now, would that have happened
You know,
because of Santiago?
I'm so conscious of the decision. If I had no attachments with Santiago or the school.
Hmm.
If I would have stayed in Bolivia with a contract, with attachments to the community, to
Yeah.
the board, and suddenly the school in Caracas offers me the job to go, I would have said no.
So you needed
I said
Santiago
no
to be where
because
you
I'm
are.
committed to Bolivia and my school, and this is it, and I won't go anywhere. So even that favored me. The fact that I was in a country where I had no ties, I had no commitment to bonds to the company, the school. So I felt fine, um, not honoring the country, the contract, and leaving within 6 months.
Okay.
Obviously, with notice, but but
So
I
you
did.
so you have that favoring you, then you have these two polar advices. Mhm.
I kind of knew their perspectives, and I wanted to trouble myself, listening to their options, because obviously after 23 years without living in Venezuela, I left a completely different country than the one that I found.
Yeah, of
And
course,
it's
because by now,
it's
politically at least, it was different.
yes, for sure, politically, and economically as well. Um, but again, no, I knew Margie's perceptions. I knew Pedro's perception from Zurich, and but at the end, I said, I need to follow my heart, and I don't feel well here. I didn't feel that my job was making any difference in in Chile. So I said, okay, au revoir, ciao, and
Okay,
I left.
I gotta ask you this, maybe because I need an answer myself. I find it very hard to understand what that means. Follow your heart.
Um,
Think with me here. How do I describe this? My listeners are online. How do you describe listening to your heart? Because we found ourselves also in that situation. You have this opportunity in front of you, you're unhappy. You will always take advice from your friends, even though you, like you said, you kind of know what they're going to tell you. But at the end, you got to make the decision. So you say,
you,
follow
you
your
know,
heart. What is that?
I guess for me, follow my heart, or was the decision between the rational and irrational.
I want
The
more.
I think that's it basically. So the rational thing would have been, stay here. This is a safe country with a stable economy. You have a secure job, versus you are going to a country where there is a dictatorship, where you left 23 years ago for different reasons, where there is no freedom of speech, which all of those things are partially, right.
Mhm.
But at the end, I put more weight uh, in the fact that I didn't feel part of the community. I didn't feel that I belonged there. I didn't like the school, the environment, and 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 for me, that was more important than the rational things. Okay. And I'm not romantic in the sense of, oh, I'm going to get reconnected with my family, the one that I left 23 years ago, because I'm not. I mean, my parents were very uh, they 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 raised us very independently. I left Venezuela when I was 16 years old. We were very independent. My brother and I were very independent in our own decisions and way of living. So I it's not that I had a romantic affair with the fact of going to back to my roots, my where I
That
was
makes
born.
sense. It makes sense to me because even I now, when I've detached, you live so many places after a while, home no longer is a romantic idea. I feel at least. I'm not sure if you agree with me on that.
And Kirti, one of the things that I discovered, now that I'm doing the job, I
Hmm.
always connected with the communities. In the case of Curacao, well, this is home to me. I learned the language. I connected with the people. I these kids um, that now are adults and grown ups are part of my life. Um, Same thing in Bolivia. Less time, but more or
Hmm.
less the same commitment. Um, and then going back to Venezuela, um, it's a different thing for me. I do the same job, but I guess I'm leaving maybe, I don't know. I don't want to say a legacy, but doing it in my own country has a different satisfaction. Let's say, it's like I'm paying back to my community where
Hmm.
I grew up, and as a child and teenager.
It's almost like you've taken all the years that you've taken something from the States,
Experience and
something from Santiago, something from Bolivia, and then you're just bringing it all back into the country.
yes, because obviously, if I wouldn't have had that journey, I would have never been attractive to them as decision makers to bring me back to, what I'm saying, like
Yeah.
the fact that I had all these experiences in international schools and my education um, was, I'm sure, was the reason to bring me back, with the benefit of even though I was not there for such a long time,
Yeah.
I had a clear a framework of the culture and the environment in which I was going to work.
Yeah. So what does it then mean now? I mean, you've in a way it's like you've returned back, and I asked you earlier, is this it? And then you said no. So it makes me ask you, what does it mean? Do you consider yourself Venezuelan, or is that a question? Is that a conversation in itself?
That is a conversation in itself because um, um, I mean it's interesting. As I was My dad, as I told you, was from Spain. So when I grew up, I was always seen, or my family was seen as the Españolitos, the foreigners, the Spaniards.
Really? Really?
Yeah, because
In Venezuela?
yeah, yeah,
Oh,
because I don't know, the food that we ate was different. Like in my house, we never ate arepas. That wasn't part of the meal. Because my dad kind of, um, he brought a lot of the Spanish culture and gastronomy to home, and so I was always seen as the the child of the Spanish guy, you know.
Okay.
Um, but after all I lived in the States when I was 16 years old, and then, it got to a point that I lived more years abroad than in Venezuela. So that made me very, very, I don't know, international maybe.
I
But,
get what you feel, but describing it
you
is
know,
very hard.
it's hard. Like, I feel at home when I'm here in Curacao, but I know I'm not from here. Like,
Mm.
could I live here? Yes. Would I adapt easily? Yes. But same would happen as it has happened in Venezuela. Like, Venezuela is still seen as a challenging country. Did I adapt well? Yes. Am I enjoying it? Yes. No regrets. No regrets. Um, have I learned? Oh yes, I've learned a lot. Have I recognized the reasons why I left, and they are still the same reasons why I would leave now? Yes.
Really?
Yes. I think I always was like an outcast within the Venezuelan context.
I
You
feel
know,
like
I,
that
I,
with
I
Curacao.
in Curacao, I felt more at home because I felt first people didn't know about my history. They had no background, you know?
Yeah,
They didn't have any pre-knowledge information about me. I made my own uh, persona here.
in
Um,
Curacao.
in
I can.
Curacao, yes. In Venezuela, you always had a history. People knew who you are, the family that you came from, the school that you went to. They had information that they can figure it out and create a perception, their own perception, whether it was right or wrong. Um, so Curacao gave me the opportunity perhaps to be more authentic. I had no judgment whatsoever.
Mhm.
Um, it also made allowed me the opportunity to think outside the box. When thinking outside the box when you are in your 20s in your own country might be perceived that you're kind of weird. Here I didn't have that. I was able to be more, in a way, progressive, liberal, you know that you know in your own country, judged by your own people, perhaps in a closed society, perhaps you didn't have those opportunities. And those things that I'm telling you now that
Mhm.
happened, back then, 20 something years ago, almost 30 years ago, are the same reasons why I would leave the country now, because they're still the same. The only difference is that I'm not the same. I'm older, wiser, and I can care less nowadays. I
Mhm.
will continue being authentic, progressive, thinking outside the box, and I don't care what people say.
It's interesting that you say that about Venezuela because exactly how you describe it, and you felt your comforts in Curacao. I feel the same way about Curacao. Like I know if I go back, I'd have the same reasons why I left. And I
Yeah,
left Curacao. I left Curacao twice. My first time in my teens, and then my second time when I'm in my 40s.
but I think it has to do with um, the where you raise, the community in which you grew up, um, the way the members of the community perceive your family and you as
Hmm.
an individual, and there is a lot of baggage there.
Yeah. And that's
You know,
where I now, it was such a light bulb moment for me when you said, in Venezuela, you have your history. In Curacao, you didn't have your history, so you could make whoever you want to. And it makes sense for me now because if I go to Curacao, I'd go because I have history. And like you said, there's baggage and everything. So you are always going back to that definition and you'll struggle within that. But then when you're outside, it's like, I can be who I want to be.
yeah. I think uh, for us nomads, every
Mhm.
time that we move to another country, we have the opportunity to reset, and
Mhm.
and obviously there will be like a string that will keep us together,
Mhm.
and which symbolizes the core of who we are. But there could be variations of who we are.
Yeah.
Let me give you an example. I think the essence is the same of me, as a person, as a professional, same values, same core. But in when I moved to from Curacao to Bolivia, I mean, look at this. It's a from a Caribbean island full of colors and diversity
Yeah.
to a landlocked country, no ocean around, in the Andes, very traditional, indigenous people were the majority. Obviously, culturally speaking, completely different. People in Curacao are more open. In the mountains, very very close.
Yeah.
And I had to become more formal, not only in my job but in my relationships, because people in the south of South America, in the Andes, are more formal.
Yeah.
So I guess, you know, I study sociology, and I think that has helped me a lot in moving and understanding in understanding cultures and understanding people, and how we should behave depending on the context.
Did you ever
Um,
feel stressed out that you had to change?
never,
Okay.
never,
Because some people
never.
feel that, I
You know,
noticed
yeah, I know. For me, when I talk about my experience, some people said, "You're crazy. I will never do that. I will never move from one country to another country to another country." And now that I'm 50, I have to say that I I I, I still have the travel warm, and I want to keep doing it, but not with the same enthusiasm that I did it when I was in my 20s.
Preach, I get you. I have the same thing. I'm like, I have the travel bug, but there's in a way, and I find it hard. I don't know if you've had that, but I never feel like I'm ever going to have what is home, traditional home. So
Yes.
whenever people ask me, "Well, where's home?" I find that such a difficult question to answer. I don't know if you've experienced that as well.
Yeah. Well, I always say that home is where your heart is.
Yeah.
It sounds cheesy, but it's true.
I 100%. I feel that I don't know if you also experience that is you make your home. That's where the
Yeah,
heart is,
that
right?
too.
You make
That
your
too.
home because you've lived so many places that you've taken I've taken at least something of every place and said this is what I want. This is what I want. So
Yeah.
Venezuela's still not it for you.
Um, I,
Or
I
you
think Venezuela came back at the right time for me. Um, I'm, I'm, I'm hoping to be making a difference in the lives of the children that I care for and that I teach, and in the families. Um, when I was hired in Bolivia to do the work in 2016, I was hired basically to fix the house, and I left the house in very good conditions with a nice reaccredited school and with more students, and in a better position than what I found the school. And I hope that when I leave Caracas, I'll go through the same process and results. And I'm in the middle of that. I'm fixing the house. In 3 years, I doubled student enrollment together with my team. Uh, so we now have double of what I got 3 years ago in terms of
fantastic.
students, and of course the faculty has grown too. And it's been a definitely a teamwork. Um, um, and I hope that when I leave, then I I think I will leave the school in a better condition than than when I got it in 2021.
So now that we've discussed all that, your life, and all the things that you've learned along the way, if you had one message for anybody out there, when you look back on your life, what is the one thing you wish you knew that somebody had told you?
Something I wish I knew.
Yeah,
Mm.
that would that would have supported you along the way. That can support someone else along their way.
I think one of the things I I, mm, I would have liked to know, during the journey, i- is the power of believing in myself. Like at times, I doubted that I was going to be able to reach certain goals, maybe uncertainties, but or insecurities. But and I don't consider myself insecure at all,
Hmm.
um, but modest. I would say, I would say I would see myself perhaps, well, you're good, but you're not good enough, you know.
Hmm.
So and that could have been interpreted as lack of trust on myself, or you know lack of security. Okay, so now when I look back and I see my journey, and everything I've done personally and professionally, I said, well, yes, I was able to make it. I did it. I and I'm and for me, success is not securing a good job. For me, success is, first of all, feeling happy, doing what I love to be doing, um, and making an impact on people's life, and through education. I think that you can do a lot of that. Um, you definitely do.
Well, I'm going to leave that with the audience for today because I really liked today's conversation. Two things that stood out: understand what follow your heart is, and your definition of trailblazing, and how the hard moments were just as necessary so to get to where you are.
Yeah, I think explaining feelings, like following your heart, are hard things to do, because at the end they're very subjective. Uh, but I think if we deep dive into the idea, I think we all can understand what following your heart is after this conversation.
I'm going to leave it with that. So, Gustavo, thank you for coming. Thank you for being
No, thank
online.
you. It's always great to reconnect, to
Always.
many years of friendship, and yoga, and so many stories, to tell.
There is. There is. I hope you enjoyed this week's conversation with Gustavo. It definitely had me thinking about my big decision I have to make at the moment. If you didn't know already, we do have a newsletter out where I do share my top tips on how you would follow your heart. Also, I would really appreciate it if you leave a review behind. It helps grow the audience, and I'm getting comfortable now sitting behind the mic. Thank you for your support and hope you enjoyed this week's episode. Till the next one.